again, and welcome to issue 4 of Technopolists. I am one of your Technopolists. I am Ken-chan.
And I am Movies McConnell. Hello, everyone. How are you today?
Welcome back. Yeah, some prelims movies. This week I've been playing on my Nintendo Switch. I've been playing Cloudpunk. Cloudpunk, great game. I know there's a lot of controversy around Cyberpunk 2077. There's that, and this Cloudpunk game is definitely way worth it. You can play it as a side scroller. You can play it in first-person perspective. It has kind of Minecraft kind of blockiness to it. Not quite that blocky, but it kind of, you think of that when you start playing it and you look around at the stuff. You're like, okay, this kind of looks a little bit like Minecraft, kind of thing. But it's like big open world kind of thing. There are seams, when you travel between some of the sections of the city. It does do some loading and stuff like that, but way worth it. It was on sale. I think it's available on all. I know it's for PS4, Xbox One, and Switch. I don't know. It might be available for the PS5 and the new Xbox XS series. I'm not sure. I'm not up on the so-called next gen because it's not next gen until everybody can actually get a console, and as you know, it's virtually impossible to score a PS5 or an Xbox XS machine currently, one of the machines currently, so that's...
Well, certainly the chip shortage probably exacerbated that right now.
Yes.
But was that already happening before the chip shortage?
I'm not sure. I know that that's one of the excuses that they're using, though, is that there's no semiconductors. But
and again, this is really poor, and I don't know if I addressed this before, but I have to have my, Peter Griffin grind my gears moment here.
Yeah.
But back in the days of, Billary, 1990s, there was this problem with the Motorola chips. That there were only 2 factories in the world. One of them was in North or South Korea. It burned down. And here we are. Less than 30 years later, we're back to, a car doesn't need embedded chips to run. It's nice. It's nice to see all that. But guess what? In my old man Buick car, 2015, it has a whole navigation Buick system, the whole deal. You can tie your phone up to it, Bluetooth, all that. But guess what? If that doesn't work, the car still runs.
Right.
Because I've had situations where it doesn't work, where it has failed. And maybe the semiconductors or chips or whatever are really needed to run the computers in the cars, but really at the end of the day, the car shouldn't really be relying on that anyway. And when you get to that portion of Snow Crash, you'll find out just what can happen. So that's something. And in addition to that, just to catch everybody up on what we were talking about before, hopefully we have some repeat viewers here that are watching what we're doing. But you had told me about a show called Devs on Hulu.
Yes.
And it has been a reason to connect up my Fire Stick downstairs because my cable situation right now does not allow for entryway onto Hulu. So you have to switch, inputs and all that. And it's a pain in the ass, and so I don't always go to it. Well, guess what? I'm going back to Hulu, but I'm savoring this show. Now, you have to tell me something real quick here.
Uh-huh.
Is the main guy the guy that played the sheriff or the agent in the movie We Are the Millers? Because I
never saw We Are the Millers. I know he's on that. He's also, I know the main guy is also on that Parks and Recreation, I think he was in, or something.
Well, then I think I think this is probably the guy, and I'm glad that I figured that out right away, because I think I would have been a little bit more upset if I had found out later on, but I gotta tell you, that show really does kick major ass. I don't know what's gonna happen, but it's not going to be something wonderful, I have a feeling. I mean, I'm not even that far into it yet, and it's the exact... Like, at first, I wanted to hate it. I watched, the first 5 minutes of it, I really want to hate this, really badly. And you just can't, you can't.
Yeah. So you're liking Devs, in other words.
Oh, I'm going to be watching it later tonight.
Okay, well, just remember, at the very end, get yourself a towel, because your brains are going to explode and leak out of your ears. I'm telling you.
Well, anyway, speaking of which...
my
Yeah.
God! Ah!
Yeah, well, and that's the thing that happens, right? With anything, But speaking of which, you had sent me over some topics and, as we call them, issues here on the Technopolis, and so I think maybe I would clear the floor yet again, step back and let you take the lead on what you were pondering.
All right. Well, one of the first things that I wanted to get talking about here was the future we were promised. A lot of us as kids, we remember, seeing kind of like a Jetsons kind of future with flying cars. We were told someday there would be postmen with jetpacks. Delivering your mail. We were going to have robots. We were going to have all kinds of strange things like that. A phone apparatus that, one of the things I saw from a World's Fair, those World's Fairs from the 30s and 40s are absolutely stunning. Some of the stuff that they show, like phone apparatus, it shows this guy wearing a suit that's basically a phone, but it's an old phone it's one of those old school phones with the cord hanging on. He hangs up in the middle of the guy's chest and stuff like that. And he has this helmet with an antenna on it so he can connect, stuff like that. But I'm going to include a nice URL in the description for some of that stuff, future we were promised. Some of that artwork that they share, the cars with the fins and stuff like that. They thought that the cars were going to get even more finny and even more spaceship looking. This is the post-World War II push-button age that they talk about in movies like This Island Earth. The atomic age, the push-button age, where everything, the horse and buggy is now gone. We all, get around in our cars now that look like spaceships. And we go to these drive-ins that look like docking, space docking ports and things like that to get our food. That have this quasi-pseudo-futuristic kind of look, the way they thought things were going to look in the future, kind of thing. And there's a lot of really cool things that come out of that. A lot of really neat artwork and a lot of things that they were kind of accurate about. The phone apparatus, we all have our phones now. That was kind of predicted. They didn't say what it would look like. Yeah, right. They didn't say what it would look. I'm sure they never would have thought it would be a flat slab,
Right.
with a camera on it. But these are basically computers that you're carrying around. They're not just phones. They're basically computers that are like way more powerful than a desktop was 20 years ago.
Sure.
Know, and it's really impressive to see what kinds of things actually happened and what kinds of things haven't happened, or at least haven't happened yet.
Right. Well, and I think that part of this, you hit on a couple of different things there, a few of which I would address as saying that, like, okay, you're wearing glasses right now. You wear glasses because you need to wear glasses. But your glasses are arcane in the world of technology, in that, just like my wife's glasses change color when they're outside so that she can have her eyes protected, you see right now, you think of a movie like Brainstorm, right? And they got Gordy walking around, and he's recording the information that they're putting onto tape, and they, all things happen in Brainstorm. But anyway, the point being that they have that giant apparatus hanging off there, right? In order, and super cooled and making it all work. Now, for right now, you would still need some kind of wire coming from your glasses down to a pack, or hopefully they could make it so small they could put it on there that your glasses should be so cyber enabled that you should be able to, it should be a heads-up display, right? But that also takes an evolution of the brain to get used to that. I then point back to my old man Buick car now. It shows me the rear view of the car in the camera, so I can face forward and look and just back up and be like, I'm not going to run over a puppy or a little kid, but I can't. It took me so long to train my brain to move back and forth. So I think there's that. Okay, there's the bulkiness of the technologies and the things, and so now you're seeing cars with fins. You're seeing the final evolution of that creative mind of what was from the 40s and 50s that they said was retro-futuristic, and the future is now. Now, if you back up a bit, right, and you go back to the 80s, we were promised all these things, and I've even said on, what shall not be named Facebook here, but I've actually mentioned before that isn't it wonderful now that we're seeing the things that were promised to us before, right? But now I think we're getting to the Carl Sagan moment. I'm trying to wrap this up for a moment and not be ignorant here.
No,
but what I want to say is Carl Sagan came back with the whole, everything science fiction, everything cyber, everything, all of this always comes back to the human condition, right? Can we agree on that? There's always like the tech. We love the tech. We love the, what was right, what was wrong. Holograms inside of holograms wrapped inside a foiled hologram. Okay, great. But it really comes back to the human condition. And so Carl Sagan said that when the technology gets so great, it's going to be like the Logan's Run kind of thing, where the robots are taking care of us and we don't even know how to reprogram the robots if they all get FUBAR. So let's go back and let's look at this for a moment. First it was survival, right? Food, clothing, shelter. Then everybody had, say, a set of tasks. So those set of tasks were clean my clothes, gather more food, put some away for the winter, put new nails in the roof. Then we went to, in like the 40s and stuff, it became this, here's a dishwasher. Well, I don't want that because I can wash 100 dishes while that stupid thing. Yeah, but you could be doing something else. So then the myth of multitasking came along, which is a myth and it's a lie, but everybody uses that, right? Then we get to high technology, big block cell phone, big microwave antenna relays, all that. But now, right, when I came into the workforce in the 90s, it was all about, do you know RSX language and can you make this perception technology box answer the phone and do, blah, blah, blah. Okay, fine. But now, right now, we're at that crossroads of okay, for the last 10 years now, Xerox, Cambridge Systems, all these companies, they're all like, well, we set up a workflow and task engine for you. So now, instead of saying to the housewife, you can watch this, no. The workflow is, it opens the dishwasher, right? It pulls open the rack. So each one of those is the task. So they broke it down to workflow and task, and they're like, okay, well, this is something technology-wise and something processing-wise in your brain. So now, they don't have anything else to exploit, right? So my question to you would be, what's the next thing? Like if you were frozen in time right now and you went forward 50 years, could you survive in employment? What would be your job? Would you be so far out of what you'd be like, well, workflow and task, and they're like, okay, Junior, right? Like they would laugh at that, right? Because they'd be like, well, dude, that was like so 2010. Yeah. So I guess that what I'm trying to say here is with all of it, it's like it depends on again, where older people say I can't operate this, I'll give it to the 7-year-old who knows how to run my phone. Well, because they grew up with it. We always come back to that. But again, it's the human condition. I think that we're heading to that point of just complete, like you were saying about the TV show that we're watching, and we're going to have our brains melt out of our heads. Well, same thing here. It's like if you went forward 40 years, would you be able to even get through a day?
Right. Yeah. That's what do they call that? Future shock, or something.
I guess that's what that is. I never read that book. Is that what that is? Is that future?
Yeah,
shock?
I think that's what that. I think the whole idea behind the concept of future shock is somebody like is in a coma for so long or something. They wake up 20 years later and everything's different, and they're just like, whoa. Or the idea of bringing somebody from the 18th century into through time to now and showing them what's going on here and watching them just like fall down and convulse and throw up and because they can't, it's just too much. They're looking at a flat screen TV going, the pictures are coming alive, things like that.
Especially somebody from that. You listen to some of our teachers told us in 7th grade. Granted, it was 40 years ago, but they told us the Tanganyika, and the just the people that went and met with this tribe that had never had any outside influence, and the person did something as simple as pulled out a number 2 pencil and wrote on a piece of paper. After they got over their shock at the piece of paper, they said, oh my, the gods have smiled because man is using magic writing stick and making figures on this thing called paper. All we can do that on is trees. It's not that they're anything less. It's just they've never seen any concept of that. So it's like that. It's almost, again, being Movies McConnell is a bane to my existence and the core of who I am. But it's the same thing as like your what's the Michael J. Back to the Future, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, Darth Vader came down from the planet Vulcan and told me to tell you to take Lillian to the dance or whatever her name was. And he's playing Eddie Van Halen playing a solo, or playing Eruption. And so, at that point, the references just become meaning. I mean, it does become a giant smear, and whether it's aggro or whether it's, pleasant, it's still something that they've never laid eyes upon and would have no reference to know what it was.
Right, yeah. Exactly. Yep.
But I think you make a good point, though, that the culmination of, something I think about a lot, and it's this culmination of all of these technologies. Like, I watch these shows on just YouTube at night, and some of these people do the most amazing things, and it's not even that they're limited by the technology anymore. The technology's so easy for them. Like, we were buying hundreds and thousands of dollars worth of equipment to do the dumbest crap that pales in comparison today with what people do with their cell phone. And I watched these kids the other night. They did stop motion animation on the ground using water around their forms laying on the ground in 95-degree weather, and took picture after picture after picture and just kept moving and shooting water around themselves on the concrete, and then made it a stop motion picture.
Oh, wow.
And it's like amazing. Like, we didn't have cameras that could do that before, but now people are using their phones. And, so they're only limited by their imagination. And it is really amazing to see all this cool stuff that people come up with,
Right,
because you can. Wow, look, I got a whole video studio in my phone. And it's true. It's very true. Yep. They promised us. They delivered.
Yeah. They delivered some of it, a good bit of it, and not quite the way. Like, one of the things I saw was video cassettes. I think it was like RCA or one of the companies. In the future, you will be able to read books on your ceiling using video cassettes. They were going to use videotape to store words and books, and just kind of like shine them onto the ceiling. It shows these two kids lying on their back, reading the text that's on the ceiling. It's like, that's not exactly what they did with videotape, of course, but
well, would I like that, man? With my eyesight going, as I get older, I would love to have, and that's something, man. When we perform, I'd love to be able to use Moog System 15 on a great big screen behind me. Like I could do it on the iPad and touch it and do the stuff. I'd love to be able to like stand there with the screen in front of me, right? A bigger one, like a big computer screen, and then outwardly have the big iPad that shows what I'm doing, and it's like tracking it. But the thing is, they're like $8,000, $20,000, $30,000. But think about that though. In your house, it's really like like one of those things for the handicapped. Mm-hmm. But it would just be for everybody. It's like, I'm borrowing the book read. Where's the upstairs book reader, right? And you should be able to just roll that in like one of those hospital tables over your bed and say, I want this, boom, 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 and have it shine up like you're saying, right on the ceiling. Freaking love that, man. That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Because now
it wasn't a bad idea,
Well, the Kindle hits you in the head and it hurts, when you fall asleep.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so with the future we were promised, that's people back in the 50s predicting the future. Now we have this thing. Now we have this thing called steampunk, where we look back in time and we reimagine technologies that weren't actually there at that point. And some of that is really creative and imaginative. I don't know if you've ever seen the anime Steam Boy.
Yeah, I've seen a little bit of that.
Okay. But it's they power everything from giant tanks and it's in the 1800s when they didn't have the combustion engine was brand new, and they were still powering trains and stuff. So imagine instead of if you just had trains, imagine if you had other kind of vehicles too that worked the same way, and maybe they had legs and stuff like that instead of wheels that turned, things like that. And everything runs on these on steam as a power source before electricity was everywhere. So you're powering everything with steam. You're powering everything by heating up water, and that steam makes pressure, and that can make any number of things happen.
Well, sure, compressed energy, yeah.
Right, yeah, and the steampunk, some of the steampunk things that come out of that, the look. They have those. You can get them on eBay. They have these glasses that
Oh, yeah.
have these different settings and you swing them in front of your eyes and stuff, and it's like this steampunk look, and it's a lot of it has everything has buckles and a lot of leather, and goggles and that kind of thing, and set.
Well, which came first, the steampunk or Johnny Depp?
I don't.
No.
I'm not.
I was just posing it only because if you saw what is it the Ichabod Crane movie, Sleepy Hollow.
Okay.
He has like all those kind of googly things, like what you're talking about. That's kind of what I'm making a reference to, is those extra lenses and all the crazy mechanical stuff. And that's really, I think for me, that's the elegance of steampunk is what I really like.
Yes.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. Yes, it's again, it's like steampunk is about style. It's not necessary. Obviously, none of that crap could. Well, maybe it could. Maybe they could build something like that. But most of that stuff wouldn't work if they tried to build it. Yeah. So we know for sure that a lot of that stuff that they fantasize about in some of those steampunk things, like the video games that have arisen around that, and some of the TV shows and movies and things like that have come out around that. A lot of that stuff just isn't really feasible. However, some of the thing, you'd be surprised if you look at history. There was a guy by the name of Charles Babbage. Okay, so here it is. So Charles Babbage was born in 1791, like you said, and died in 1871.
Yeah, you lived a pretty long time for that era.
Yeah. Now he invented first. He was one of these guys. He had the idea, going back to the steampunk. If you can use steam to power machines, to build things, and to transport things, why can't you use steam for mental things, to do calculations and things like that? That was his theory. So he built, lo and behold, he built a little piece of it. And he had blueprints to build a deluxe model. He built first a thing called the difference engine, which was a mechanical computer. Now, this mechanical computer wasn't something that was like real cheesy. It's like your calculator and no, this thing could do big numbers instantaneously. They had these die. You set this, you set your calculation, you turn the crank, boom, here's your answer. That's the way the thing worked. And he had a little piece of it that he carried around and he showed people. And he went to the queen, and he said, "I want to build this." And she was like, "What the hell is this thing?" I think at some point she said, "All right, well, we can do this," but he couldn't find anybody that was. These pieces had to be precise.
Sure.
They had to be machined precisely, and he couldn't find anybody in the entire European area there that could do something that precise. So it took him forever, and then when they started getting that going, he stops everything. He's like, whoa, no. Better idea. I want to build the analytical engine instead. And by then it's just like, okay, everybody threw their hands up. We're out of money. Forget it. I think it was the 90s. Somebody decided to take his blueprints, and they built the analytical engine, and lo and behold, it freaking worked. It freaking worked. Now, what does that mean? Well, that means had the thing been built when he wanted to build it, World War I would have lasted about a half an hour, because right. The weight of the projectile is known. You put the thing into the cannon. What are the numbers, folks? This, that, and the other thing. Wind 30 miles an hour. Boink. Here, okay. Aim it this way. Boom, into the trench every time.
Yeah. Well, that's like Turing machines and stuff too. So you're talking about. I mean, I'm sure he was. If you look it up, I mean, I don't know if there's a connection between. I mean, I would assume that Alan Turing then was doing that work after Babbage did that work. Like that's, Turing was the guy that was, he was put upon by the English government because of his sexual beliefs, but he actually helped to save the war and stuff. Like he was actually, if you watch the story about him, he was actually going to be chemically castrated by by his own country because he, homosexuality at the time was considered to be, an aberration or whatever. So at that point, he he did a lot of that kind of what you're talking about, where the machines can do the calculations and spit out the numbers. And it's funny you talk about that because, you know, you look at again, you know, if you look at something like Buckminster Fuller design, everything Buckminster Fuller is summed up in this statement. You could buy the stereo that has a bunch of flashing lights on it, but what's a stereo to do? It's to make loud music sound good. So which is more important, flashing lights or quality equipment? And so when you see razzmatazz, when you see stupid crap, you realize it's already a foregone conclusion that it's a piece of garbage. Even the outward appearance of something that has quality is going to give a better feeling to the customer, okay? Mm-hmm. So having said that, you know, there are things, again, like Steampunk. See, for me, I personally really don't have any kind of like for movies in an alternate universe, you know, or in a different timeline. Like I'm already like folding my arms and saying, forget it, I want nothing to do with this. I'm out of here. I'm hitting the pavement. I'm taking my popcorn with me. Okay, but having said that, the things about steampunk and the way it's portrayed seems to follow kind of that Buckminster Fuller design. Yeah, sure, it's an alternate reality, and sure, none of these other things exist. And in that area, in that realm, you know, then you can see a whole lot of like, wow, you can really make efficient steam engines, and you could do really efficient things like that. And to that purpose, my brother, who is a mechanical engineer, electrical engineer, whatever he is, and he works on planes, I don't know, it's all top secret, but he had like a Burroughs adding machine back in the early 70s. So he had an actual, you know, it's a mechanical calculator. But when you say calculator, everybody thinks, oh, it's, you know, it's, you know, or whatever. No. This was the thing that was the size of a very large IBM Selectric, which, again, for you kids that don't know what IBM is, IBM really is International Business Machines. IBM got into computers, but IBM and Burroughs and those companies made mechanical machines. They made machines.
Adding machines and stuff like that, where you pound the buttons and tick, 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 tick.
Well, yeah, but it's more than that. Like in this thing, it's not a crank or anything. It's more like you're plugging it in like it's an IBM Selectric typewriter, and it's got the big head on it, you know, that would go back and forth like a typewriter, but it doesn't move anywhere. But it's like you're setting conditions. You know, you could sit there and do 2 and 2 is 4, 4 and 4. You know, you can do that if you want, but it's a waste of time. But the thing is like a big mechanical, like it's spitting out like and it's running like when you enact it. So it's really a mechanical computer. You know, it's computing. But and I think that's, you know, what we're kind of talking about here is depending on, you know, what the mission is, right? If the mission is to be tiny and lightweight, then something like that's not going to do. But if the mission is to be on a mining planet spinning backwards around Pluto, I probably would want, if I had the room and the spaceport, I'd probably want that big, heavy, chunky thing, because I would want that to make sure that it kept working, because the little breadboard thing would probably be toasted by somebody sitting on it, right?
Yeah.
So again, I think a lot of things, I think when we talk about steampunk and we talk about, you know, resistors and electronics and all that, you know, I got a big 3-gun video projector upstairs if anybody wants it, but I've got 6 of the other ones that I got out of like somewhere in the other room, and I'm playing Fahrenheit 451 where I'm showing movies on every wall and having a wonderful time. But, you know, at the end of the day, again, I think that like when people offer prizes, right? Here's one for you. They offer the prizes and they say, can you make a clock that will keep running with no human intervention for 300 years? And be accurate. So how do you do that, right? And the other one on the other end is the one that I wanted to see, and you reminded me of this just now again for the second time tonight, so I must say it, that I think there's a tricorder prize. Isn't there a tricorder prize or something like that? Like whoever takes the cell phone or the smartphone and makes it do, like there's like 3 conditions that you have to do. I had heard about this at one point, and I think I looked it up, but I'm just trying to remember. It's like, you know, Like, imagine it. Imagine if your phone really could do, like now they're doing cardio mobile and all those things, but imagine if your phone really could just be your Medikit. You know, it's like, where's your phone, kid? You know, oh, he's vitamin D deficient right now. He's going into rickets. Like, put that phone on there and she just zap right into your arm and go, well, he needed a shot of voltage. Reset his heart. You know, I mean, like, why don't, we're all carrying these things. Like, why won't, and again, if we're back to that 300 years in the future, they'll be like, well, what do you mean you don't have the automatic Medikit that when you cut your finger off, it regenerates one for you?
Right, yeah.
I mean, depending on how far out you move, it could just be like, well, Jimmy just died. Well, here comes Jimmy, right? And it's like, well, what do you mean? Well, it took me a whole 10 minutes to regenerate. I had to get back out here to come play ball with you some more. You know? So, I mean, who knows? Who you know, I think we're at a crossroads in technology and health and all these things that's going to be amazing.
Yeah, and what you were saying there a little earlier about the being out, what was it, out in deep space with the chunky,
computer.
You want the more durable. That reminds me of something somebody told me a long time ago. I was making fun of, I used to be one of these people that made fun of the way that the deck of the Enterprise looked on the old, the original Star Trek.
Didn't we all?
Yeah, that looks ridiculous. You can tell that's not. And somebody said to me, I think it was my mom. She said, "Well, what should the bridge of a ship that can go the speed of light look like?" I'm like, it's like they had to, when they were breaking the sound barrier with airplanes. They had a problem. The problem was the instruments would blow out every time.
Sure.
So what they had to make more durable instruments so that didn't happen. Okay, so now you're flying around something that goes the speed of light. Do you have, things like this for your keyboard, or do you have something where you're like, what I mean? It's like so durability. So you don't when you hit warp 9, the something like this doesn't have keys going bing all over the place, or something.
Exactly. And you certainly don't need, and I mean, that's always, so again, being movies McConnell, but again, we're back to the movies and things where it's always like, if you watch Andromeda Strain, what happened? Well, they were using a paper readout, and a piece of paper got stuck down on the clapper bell, so they didn't get their new alerts, and they didn't know what was going on, so they cleaned out the paper. There's always some stupid mechanical or electronic problem. The funniest part was, I read all the Star Trek 1 through 20 or whatever, the James Blish adaptions of the original show, and the one thing that kept hitting me right in the face, like a Kindle at night at about 30 miles an hour, was that because in the original Star Treks they used 8 different directors or whatever, and 4 different producers, and then I guess it was Friedkin or whatever his name was, Friedman, that kept it all in line. But they were all kind of given their little bit of freedom to do it their own way. But they never seemed to put the emphasis on what the emergency really was. It was always like the Enterprise has to go here or go there. And the thing is, if you have basically what we would consider today at least to be warp drive or something very fast, like you could get there almost what we would think instantaneously, but it was, when you read the books, they make it a point to tell you what every mission is about. And after like the 6th or 7th book that has like 3 episodes in each book, you're like, okay, the Enterprise yet one more time has to be somewhere in the next 72 hours that is 70.4 hours away by warp 15 or whatever, and oh my god, it's going to be a huge problem. And it's just funny because it's always the same thing. It's kind of like watching House, right? If you watch the show House, it's like, well, okay, in this one geographic place. Now, I can understand if House traveled to like all the different hospitals across the world and was solving these problems. But what are the odds that every week, like 6 different crazy ass patients that have the most crazy, wild symptoms of some unknown disease are going to show up? So I guess the point I'm making is the suspension of disbelief just becomes ludicrous. And so I think that's what we're up against with any of these things. It's like, you can certainly believe in a world of steam and steam running everything, but you can't believe in an AM radio in the midst of that steam powered world.
Right.
So, there's just things you just have to do, right?
Right. Okay, well, that about does it for tonight's issue. We want to thank you for joining us. Be sure to smash that like button, share and subscribe, and we will see you next time.
Have fun, everybody. Have a great day.